So we're going to run through this pretty quickly. It is Friday, November 4th, and something that's been trending online in the business world is the news that layoffs have begun at Twitter, which is now owned by Elon Musk. There's lots of information to cover in this article, so let's get right in. This article by Business Insider, it's called Elon Musk Starts Layoffs at Twitter shortly after an email went out telling employees that cuts would start the next day. The summary includes that Elon Musk began to terminate employees late Thursday. Several people told Insider access to work platforms were suddenly cut off for many at Twitter, making it clear they'd been let go. The move came just hours after an email went out telling workers to expect layoffs to begin on Friday. So layoffs were supposed to begin on Friday. An email was sent on Thursday to let them know that layoffs were going to begin the next day, but the access to work platforms actually began on Thursday night. Twitter employees began losing access to work platforms soon after the now Elon Musk-owned company told them to expect layoffs to begin the following day. Workers suddenly started to get locked out of things like Slack and email around 8 p.m. Pacific time on Thursday night, multiple employees told Insider. Despite no official note explaining they'd been let go, the employees were certain they could count themselves among the 3,700 of their colleagues expected to be hit by Musk's planned layoffs. So you can imagine how that would be very surprising. You're expecting the layoffs to begin the next day. You might be working late on a project thinking that you clearly don't know if you're going to be laid off or not, so you might still be working on something, and all of a sudden you are getting locked out of things like Slack and email. If you worked in corporate America, you know that these things happen, and it's rather easy for HR and leadership to lock you out by affecting the computer systems that you're running on. Maybe they shut down your laptop remotely. There's lots of ways in which they can make sure that you no longer have access to their system. Well, let's keep going. It's going east to west, one person said. People working for Twitter in London were first to find out, then New York, then people working remotely in the Midwest. California, Twitter's biggest hub, came last, multiple employees said. So literally working east to west around the world to lock out employees. My entire team is gone, one person affected by the layoffs in New York said. They worked on a team of 30 plus people. Another person estimated that 90% of their team was cut. So that is scary, likely scary for both those that have been cut, but also for those who remain. So imagine that you have a team of, like they said, 30 plus people and 90% of them are cut and you get to be the lucky one who stays. That was likely going to be a lot more work for you until new people are hired for your team, or just a lot of more work for you if the company decides that you'll be doing a lot more work on your own and they don't necessarily want to hire replacements. Meanwhile, Musk ignored the layoffs publicly, tweeting, "Why is small talk even legal?" as his employees were being let go. I think that's the type of sentiment that people really dislike when it comes to corporate America and these situations of layoffs. It's one thing to announce the layoffs and understand that business cuts and changes in strategy will likely always be inevitable or part of being in corporate America. But to go about it where you aren't providing any communication to the employees or to the company concerning the strategy or change in strategy or upcoming changes or the layoffs, and then to tweet something insensitive like, why are they talking about this? When you haven't provided any direction, what do you expect the employees to do? They're going to have to talk to each other to try and figure out what's going on. It's just very insensitive from my perspective that he would tweet that. Like, why is small talk even legal? Why is it legal that you are not providing any type of communication to these people when they've devoted portions of their lives to this company? And they likely deserve at least some information so they can begin to craft how their life looks following the layoff. But I digress. By closer to 11 p.m. Pacific time, more than 1,000 people at Twitter had lost their jobs, according to employees and messages seen by Insider. The cuts went across the company, from Singapore to the UK to San Francisco, hitting every department. Content moderation and health, Advertising, data storage, product, legal, program management, all were hit with layoffs. Cuts were deep in most areas, but some were so drastic, one person said, they don't know how we keep things going in some areas. Hundreds of Twitter workers began posting on Twitter about losing their jobs too. Many wrote of gratitude for the years they spent working at the platform and for their colleagues. "Best job I ever had," one person said. "So it ends," another wrote. "It was a wild ride, but I don't regret a single second of it, and I would do it again in a heartbeat," another said. Really, that's the best sentiment, right? That you've worked at a job or with a company and you really enjoyed all the time that you spent there, and even if you're terminated, you don't regret the time that you spent there, you would do it over again. That's a pretty positive outlook concerning a termination. Just hours before, Twitter staffers received their first communication from the company since Musk took over last week. It was an unsigned note explaining they could expect layoffs to begin on Friday, sent after Insider reported such plans. Twitter said all affected workers would receive an email Monday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Time or 6 a.m. Pacific Time, and that's how they would find out if they'd been let go. When employees began to be cut on Thursday night, no one had received such an email, multiple employees said. So you could understand how that would be both surprising and frustrating. But again, it's the company and HR's way likely of protecting the company from employees that may quote-unquote go rogue and try to download and access information that normally they wouldn't try to download or save or access if they were not being terminated. In the note from Twitter, the company also said it was temporarily closing all offices. Employees were then told to leave immediately, with office security proceeding to go throughout the offices in New York and San Francisco, ensuring employees were gone or leaving. Again, not a great experience if perhaps you're there working late and all of a sudden security just comes up and says, "Hey, you need to get out of here right now." But if you worked in corporate America, you understand these are the measures that leadership and HR will go to in order to ensure that rogue employees don't try to take physical files or physical items from the office, maybe even do more to the office and the structure itself. Let's continue. The closures were sudden and took some of the workers off guard, particularly as Musk had started to demand intense levels of work since taking over Twitter, leading some employees to sleep at the office. So many of you may roll your eyes and say, well, it's typical to have to sleep at the office. And yes, for some companies, including some I've worked for in the past, that is typical, where you may get there really early, you may stay really late, you may be ordering your dinner and even a late snack because you're at the office at all times of the day and night. But it doesn't seem like this was the atmosphere, the environment for Twitter prior to Musk taking over. So you can understand how that would be shocking for the Twitter employees. The article continues, the immediacy of moving people out of the office with no date of when they could return made more sense after people began being laid off that night. Again, imagine that you're at the office, you're working hard, security comes over and says, hey, you need to leave the office immediately, and you would probably begin taking some of your things, and then you'd think, well, when am I coming back? And security wouldn't be able to give you an answer. So imagine if you had more personal items at the office. Do you grab those items? Do you leave them? Does security tell you, hey, don't take those items? Are those yours? Do those belong to the company? That could be a very tricky situation. I hope the Twitter employees had made plans to move their personal items from their office in anticipation that something like this might happen. Usually the corporations will send your personal items back to you. They'll pack up a little box and mail it off to whatever address that they have on file, your mailing address. But you can imagine how this would be a very tense situation for the Twitter employees. Let's keep going. It's a breakup by text, a person affected by the layoff said. I think that's just a comparison. It doesn't say anywhere in the article that people were actually broken up by text messages. They're just getting these emails and being escorted out of the buildings by security. Earlier in the evening, responding to the news that they could expect layoffs on Friday, hundreds of Twitter workers began to flood Slack with blue hearts, signifying love for Twitter colleagues, and the salute emoji, according to employees and messages seen by Insider. The Titanic hit an iceberg, and we are that band playing music going down with the ship, an employee said. Last week, Musk quickly fired Twitter's entire C-suite and a number of high-ranking managers, as Insider reported. Employees received no internal goodbye messages from any of them. If you've worked in corporate America, you have probably have memories or experience when senior leaders leave. There's usually an email from, let's say, HR stating that that senior leader has been terminated. Well, no, they don't say terminated. They would say something nice like they're no longer with the company. That's the language they use. So they might say, hey, Bob is no longer with the company. We appreciate his service. Or it might just say Bob is no longer with the company. Or sometimes the soon-to-be leaving hiring officer will know that they'll be leaving by a particular time, and the email or message may be addressed from that individual. And it might give more of a timeline, say that, hey, Bob served the company for 20 years and he has decided to retire by the end of this year or the end of this quarter. Different ways that companies approach these messages. But it seems like at Twitter, they were not sending any emails about the senior leaders leaving. So again, the lower level employees had some foreshadowing of what may or may not happen in the situation that Twitter was going to also terminate their roles. You know, that just kind of, that sets a certain morale if you are working at Twitter and you have these senior leaders that you're used to receiving guidance and strategy from, and one day they just are no longer there and there's no explanation or reason from corporate concerning why those individuals left. The article continues, throughout Thursday, workers in the office in New York and San Francisco were taking photos with one another, two employees said. That's another thing you have to be careful of, because in some corporate settings, really in some offices, regardless of the industry, it's not allowed to take pictures and to take video while you're in the office on the work premises. So I wonder what Twitter's policy concerning that is. Anyways, let's keep going. They were taking pictures with one another in an effort to make it the best possible final day, one of them noted. Another reason why Twitter likely had the employees just escorted from the premises, again, to avoid policy violations like video and pictures being taken while on the premises. On Slack and in private text, employees jokingly referred to Musk's planned layoffs as the Thanos snap, a reference to the Marvel character who made half of the universe disappear with a snap of his fingers. I'm actually relieved, another impacted worker said. It's literally been the Hunger Games, another person said, of the last week working under Musk. Musk has already gone about remaking Twitter in his own image, demanding constant work, rapid turnarounds on projects he's deemed critical, and removing perks employees enjoyed. On Thursday, workers realized a company-wide day of rest, a weekday where the entire company did not work, had been removed from their calendars. Imagine if you had something planned for that day of rest. Hopefully the day of rest was farther away in the future. But it says that those days of rest, that day of rest, were put in place by former CEO and co-founder Jack Dorsey, who frequently urged people to avoid burnout and to take time for themselves over work. Musk is now demanding people at Twitter literally work 24/7 and at a maniacal pace, as Insider reported. Obviously, we feel compassion for the Twitter employees, but understanding that Musk runs Tesla, and it seems that he runs Tesla in a similar fashion, where he expects high dedication, long hours, late nights. This was something that Twitter employees could likely foresee happening to the company, understanding that Musk was in the process of buying it. Twitter under Musk is supposed to be much different, as well as much smaller.